You know that one memory you wish you could tear out of your mind? The one that plays in perfect, brutal detail every single time you close your eyes? This is mine. It's the night I poured a glass of expensive whiskey over a young man's last dream. I can still hear the hum of my restaurant, the gilded clove, the low murmur of money and power, the clink of crystal, the scent of truffle and ambition. It was my kingdom, my symphony. And that night, a single note was off. I saw him from across the room. A server. Daniel. New, obviously. His hands were a little unsteady on the silver tray. His posture was all wrong. Not the confident, invisible glide I demanded, but something hesitant, almost fragile. It irritated me instantly. A table of my most critical regulars was waiting for their wine. He was taking too long. I watched as he approached their table, his focus so intense he didn't see the busboy turning. The edge of his tray clipped a water glass. It didn't even break. Just a splash, a soft clatter. A minor sin in the grand scheme. But to me, in that moment, it was an affront. A stain on my perfect, polished world. My heels clicked on the marble like gunshots as I crossed the floor. The room seemed to quiet, sensing a storm. I stopped right in front of him. He looked up, his eyes wide, already apologizing. I didn't let him finish. My voice was ice, sharp, clear, and meant to cut. Are you trying to embarrass this establishment, or is basic coordination simply beyond you? He flinched. Actually flinched. The color drained from his face. I saw the sheen of exhaustion under the lights, the dark circles he couldn't hide. It only made me angrier. His weakness felt like a personal insult. This isn't some roadside diner, I continued, my words dripping with contempt. People pay for perfection here, not for this. I gestured at him, at the damp spot on the tablecloth. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His throat worked. He just looked shattered. And then, the final, unforgivable act. I snatched the half-finished glass of amber whiskey from the table next to me. I wasn't even thinking. It was pure, arrogant rage. Perhaps this will help you remember the standard, I said, my voice low and venomous. I tipped the glass. The liquid arced, slow and cruel, and soaked right into the front of his crisp white shirt. It spread in a dark, ugly stain over his heart. The gasp from the nearby tables was audible. A sharp, collective inhale. He stood frozen, not wiping it away, not moving, just staring at the floor, his jaw clenched so tight I saw a muscle jump. I turned on my heel. Clean yourself up. You're done for the night. I walked away. The satisfaction was immediate and hollow. Order restored, lesson delivered. I didn't look back, not once. For 2 days, I didn't think of him. He was a resolved problem, a speck I'd wiped from my lens. Then, my head sommelier, Mark, came into my office. His face was pale. He held his phone like it was something dangerous. "Victoria," he said. His voice was strange. "About the new kid, Daniel." "What about him?" I didn't look up from my invoices. "I just found out from a mutual friend. He wasn't working here." I finally glanced up, impatient. "What are you talking about?" Mark swallowed. "He was a customer. He'd saved for 8 months for the 10-course tasting menu. It was his final wish." The words landed, but they didn't make sense. Final wish? He has terminal glioblastoma, stage 4. The doctors gave him maybe 3 months, tops. Mark's eyes were glistening. He just wanted to know what it felt like to be in a place like this, just once. The air vanished from the room. My lungs just stopped. I heard a roaring in my ears. The numbers on the invoice blurred into a gray smear. Final wish, terminal, 3 months. The image hit me with physical force, his wide, tired eyes, the tremble in his hands. It wasn't nerves, it was fatigue, it was pain, and I had called it weakness. I saw the whiskey soaking into his shirt. I saw the humiliation in the line of his shoulders. I had taken the one beautiful, hard saved for night of a dying young man, and I had used it to play God. My stomach heaved. I stumbled to the private bathroom and was violently, utterly sick. When I looked in the mirror, a stranger stared back. A monster with my face. Sharp, cold, cruel. All the money, all the power, all the control. It was just a gilded shell around something rotten. The shame was a physical weight. It sat on my chest, crushing. It followed me into my penthouse, where the floor-to-ceiling windows showed a glittering New York that suddenly felt fake. The mirrors here showed the same hollow creature. The verdict was in, and I was guilty. I had to find him. Not to explain, not to justify. There was no justification. I had to find him to say 2 words I had never truly meant in my life. I'm sorry. It took a week of using every cold, calculated skill I had, the ones that had built my empire, for a different purpose. I called in favors. I hired a discreet investigator. The guilt was my only fuel. I got an address, a small, modest apartment in Queens, a world away from my Manhattan. I stood outside his building for an hour, my hands shaking in the cool evening air. What right did I have to knock? To intrude on his life, his limited time again? But the memory of that stain on his shirt, it was a brand on my own soul. I knocked. His mother answered. She had his eyes, tired, sad, but kind. When I told her my name, a shadow passed over her face. She knew. He had told her. But she let me in. And there he was, on a worn sofa, wrapped in a blanket. He looked smaller, thinner. The illness was a cruel sculptor. But when he looked up and saw me, he didn't look angry. He just looked resigned. I know why you're here, he said, his voice softer than I remembered. You don't have to. I do, I said. My voice cracked. It was the first crack in the ice I'd built around myself for 20 years. Daniel, what I did, there is no excuse. It was inhuman. I am so deeply sorry. The words felt inadequate. They were just sounds. They couldn't soak up whiskey or give him back his night. He was quiet for a long moment. He just studied me. You looked angrier than I was scared, he said finally. That undid me. A tear escaped. Then another. I, Victoria Hale, who never cried, stood in a stranger's living room and wept silently. Not pretty tears. Ugly, choking ones of sheer, undiluted shame. Let me make it right, I whispered, wiping my face with a trembling hand. Please, not for me, for you. Let me give you the night you deserved. No crowd, no pressure, just the food, the experience, as my guest, as my penance. He watched me. His mother watched from the doorway. The silence stretched, thin and tight. Then he gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Okay. I closed the Gilded Clove for a night, a Tuesday. I told the staff it was a private event. I didn't hire extra help. I did everything myself. I arranged the single perfect table in the center of the empty dining room. Soft candlelight, a single orchid. The music was a low, gentle jazz piano, nothing more. I was in the kitchen, my hands actually shaking as I plated the first amuse-bouche when he arrived. His mother helped him in. He was wearing a simple, clean shirt. He walked slowly. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. My one chance. I served the first course. My voice was barely a whisper as I explained it. He took a bite, closed his eyes, and he smiled. It was a quiet, genuine smile. It transformed his entire face. This is he began, then just nodded. Thank you. That thank you felt like a knife to my heart. He was thanking me. As the night went on, something impossible happened. We started to talk. Not about the weather, not as owner and guest. He asked me about why I started the restaurant. I heard myself telling him things I'd never told anyone, about my father's failed diner, about the hunger to build something that wouldn't crumble. It sounded pathetic, even to my own ears. He listened, really listened. Then he talked. He talked about his love for old comic books, the way the rain smelled in the spring, his dream of seeing the redwoods in California. He talked about life not with bitterness, but with a quiet, aching wonder for what he was losing. He wasn't poor, not in any way that mattered. He was rich in a currency I had never understood. My wealth, my power, my Michelin stars. They were like painted cardboard next to his quiet courage. I felt smaller with every word he spoke, and yet I also felt seen. For the first time, without judgment, without fear. Halfway through the meal, a wave of pain crossed his face. He tried to hide it, but I saw it. Without thinking, I went to his side. Daniel? It's okay, he breathed. Just a bad minute. I didn't go back to the kitchen. I pulled a chair over and sat beside him, not as a host, just as a person. I poured him a glass of water. My hand covered his on the tablecloth. It was an instinct, pure and simple. His hand was cold. Mine was warm. He looked at our hands, then up at me. In the candlelight, his eyes held no accusation, only a profound, weary kindness. You know, he said softly, that night, I was so scared. Of everything. Of dropping a plate, of saying the wrong thing, of dying. He took a shallow breath. And when you did what you did, for a second, all that other fear just went away. It was just you. And I thought, wow, she must be so afraid too. A sob broke from my chest. I crumpled. I laid my head on the edge of the table, my shoulders shaking. I cried for him, for the pain I'd caused, for the lonely, fearful woman I'd been all my life. He didn't say anything. He just rested his other hand gently on my hair. And in that touch, in that unbearable tenderness offered to his own destroyer, something broke open inside me. It wasn't just guilt anymore. It wasn't just shame. It was something terrifying and vast. Something that felt like love. Not a romantic fantasy, not a storybook cure, but a profound, humbling, devastating love for this beautiful, fleeting soul I had been too blind to see. I had come here to give him a night of luxury, and he had given me back my humanity. He closed his eyes. For a minute, I thought he'd fallen asleep. Then, his voice, thin but clear, painted a picture. I think the light would be different, filtered, like being in a green cathedral, and the air, it would smell like damp earth and something ancient, something that remembers dinosaurs. A faint smile touched his lips. I think I'd feel very small, but in a good way, like my story is just a sentence in a very long book. My vision blurred. That's beautiful, Daniel. He opened his eyes and looked right at me. You could go. You should. See it for real. I will, I promised. And for the first time, a promise wasn't a business transaction. It was a sacrament. The lines blurred. The woman who had once spilled his drink was now the one carefully adjusting his pillows, learning the schedule of his medications from his mother, Maria. She and I, we forged a quiet alliance. Two women from impossibly different worlds, united in care for this fading light. One evening, Maria was exhausted. I told her to go to bed, that I'd sit with him. She hugged me, a real tight hug, She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. Daniel was sleeping fitfully. I sat in the armchair beside his bed, a book open but unread. The only light was a small lamp. His breathing was shallow. He stirred. "Victoria? I'm here. Are you real?" His voice was slurry with medication. "Sometimes I think I dreamed you up. The wicked witch who turned into this." A soft, broken laugh escaped me. "I'm real, and I'm so sorry it took me so long to become this." He reached a hand out from under the blanket. I took it. His grip was weak. "Don't be sorry," he whispered. "You're the plot twist I never saw coming." I brought his hand to my cheek. I held it there. The tears were warm on both our skins. "I think," he started, his voice fading. "I think if things were different, I could have loved you." The air left my lungs. The confession hung between us, tender and tragic. It wasn't a declaration of what was. It was a haunting of what could never be. "I know," I breathed, my voice raw. "And Daniel, in every way that matters, in every way I'm capable of now, I do love you." It was the truth. A love with no future. A love that asked for nothing. A love that was just an honoring. A sacred, humble attendance. He squeezed my hand, once, gently, and then he drifted back to sleep. I stayed there all night, holding his hand, keeping watch. I was no longer a restaurateur. I was a sentinel. It was the most important job I had ever been given. The end came quickly, as it often does. It was a gray, drizzling morning. Maria called me, her voice a thin thread of despair. "It's time, Victoria. Please come." I was there in 20 minutes. The hospice nurse was in the room, speaking in low tones. Maria was holding one of Daniel's hands. I walked to the other side of the bed and took the other. He was barely there. But when I said his name, his eyelids fluttered. "Hey," I said, smoothing his hair back. My voice was miraculously steady. "I'm here. We're all here." He took a slow, rattling breath. His eyes found mine. There was no fear in them, just a deep, deep tiredness. And something else. Something like peace. He looked at me, then at his mother, and then his gaze drifted to the window, to the gray light. "The redwoods," he breathed, so softly it was almost just the shape of the words on his lips. And then he was gone. The silence in the room was absolute. It wasn't an empty silence. It was a full, heavy, holy silence. Maria wept, her head on his chest. I stood, still holding his cooling hand, tears streaming silently down my face. I had arrived too late to love him in any ordinary way, but I had been there for this, for the sacred transition. I had been granted the grace to see him out. It was the greatest privilege of my life. After the funeral, a small gathering in a Queen's church hall, Maria handed me a plain envelope. "He asked me to give this to you, the week before." My hands trembled as I opened it. It wasn't a letter. It was a check. For the exact amount of the tasting menu and wine pairing from that first ruined night. On the memo line, he had written in his shaky script, "Paid in full," and underneath, "Now go see the trees." For both of us. I folded the check and held it to my heart. He had paid his debt, to teach me that mine was forgiven. I didn't sell the gilded clove, but I changed it. I started a foundation in Daniel's name. One night a month, the restaurant hosts Daniel's Table. We partner with hospice organizations. We invite individuals and their families who are walking that final path. We give them the full, beautiful, gentle experience. No crowds, no pressure, just beauty and dignity and a moment of peace. I serve them myself. And 3 months after he died, I got on a plane to California. I rented a car and drove north, to the fog-shrouded valleys where the redwoods live. I stood among them, as he said I would. The light was different, filtered and holy. The air did smell of ancient, damp earth. I looked up and up at giants that had stood for 1,000 years. I felt very, very small, but in a good way. I put my hand on the rough, mossy bark of the oldest one I could find. I closed my eyes. I saw them, Daniel, I whispered to the quiet green cathedral. For both of us. I didn't feel him, not in some magical way, but I felt the love he had left behind. It wasn't a ghost. It was a seed, and it had taken root in the most unlikely hardened soil, my own heart. The wealthy woman who thought she had everything died the night she spilled that drink. The woman who was left behind. She was poorer. She had less control. She cried more easily. But she was alive. Truly, humbly, finally alive. Love didn't come to save me. It came to break me open. And from the cracks, the light finally got in. Sometimes, late at night in the empty restaurant, after I've polished the last glass and turned off the main lights, I'll stand where it happened. I'll look at that spot on the floor. The stain is long gone, of course, but I still see it. I see him, and I whisper the 2 words that began my salvation and his farewell. Thank you.